Chapter 3 Man with a Spear. At first, Bjorn thought this man must be Thor himself, from his dull iron helmet with the boar's crest, to the gold rings on his fingers and the decorated sword belt around his body. He looked like a god, or a hero at least. His face was broad and as brown as a piece of leather. His hair was a rusty red and his eyes as blue as the summer sky. His square beard jutted as stiffly as though it were carved from whalebone. His mighty spear was thrust out in front of him. What Bjorn noticed most, though, was that the iron point of the spear never shook the slightest bit, and it was aimed at Glam's heart now. Glam was twittering like a partridge disturbed on the nest, and his voice was not coming out very strongly. He was saying, "Peace be with you, master. I am only chasing my slave. The little outlaw is trying to run away from a thrashing." The red man with the spear said, "Do you blame him? And who is to give the thrashing?" Glam answered, "I am, master. It is my right." The man said, "What have you done, slave, to merit a thrashing from this big fellow?" Glam tried to answer, raising his voice above Bjorn's, but the man with the spear stepped forward a pace and kicked out, sprawling him on the beach. Then the man said to Glam, "I am a Jomsviking out of Jomsburg in Vendland. My name is Starkad, and apart from my master, Jarl Skallagrim, no man disobeys when I command. If I say to a seal, 'Speak now,' then that seal speaks. If I say to a rock, 'Dance for me,' then the rock dances. Yet you, a stinking hound of a stinking island dressed in a stinking cowhide that should have gone on to the midden 3 years ago, you dare to speak first when I am talking to this boy? How do you explain that?" He bent a little and put the point of his spear against Glam's ribs, just by his heart, and pushed so that the blade went through the horsehide a little way. Glam lay back so hard on the pebbles that he looked as though he wanted to burrow into the earth. The big man leaned a little more on the ash spear and held Glam there. Bjorn was amazed to hear that Glam was crying now, just as he himself had been only a short while before, and this made him even more afraid, for if a man like Glam was crying, then this Jomsviking must be more terrible than any wolf or bear. Then the man who called himself Starkad said sharply to Bjorn, "Well, I am waiting, slave. What did you do to cause your master so much anger that he comes sliding down the shale slope like a madman to catch you?" Bjorn noticed that many men, all in iron helmets and holding spears, were standing by the ship now, and he felt foolish to speak in such brave company. But Starkad was glaring at him, with his pale eyes so fearfully that Bjorn whispered, "I am no slave, sir. I am freeborn and a farmer's son. This man claims me because my father would not fight him, but jumped over a cliff instead." Glam began to cry out, "His father was a coward. He burned my barn, then he would not face me with the axe." Bjorn got angry then and began to shout that his father was crippled in the axe arm, and that anyway it was the lightning that had burned Glam's barn. Starkad listened to them both, his features never moving, only his blue eyes shifted from one to the other, and his stiff red beard flickered a time or two as the land breeze caught it. He said, "Whether it was lightning or not, if the man died, then that was his punishment, surely." Bjorn called out, "This man burned down our house too, Viking, so I have neither father nor house to go to." Starkad said coldly, "It seems that strange bargains are driven in Iceland these days. I've always heard that you Icelanders were wild dogs with a law of your own. To me it seems that this man has a very good bargain if he gets a cripple to fling himself over a cliff, then burns that man's house down and takes his son as a slave, all because lightning fired his own barn." Glam was yelling out, "I claim my rights, Jomsviking. I will not let you or anyone, not even Odin, cheat me of my rights." When he said this, the Jomsviking's eyes stretched themselves so wide that Bjorn thought they would jump out because the lids could not keep them in any longer. It was almost as though Glam had struck the man on the face. There was an awful quietness then, as the man began to press a little harder on his spear end. Glam started to struggle again and whimper like a trapped fox cub. Then, from the prow of the longship, a voice called out, "This fool still speaks of Odin. He is a heathen then, and does not know that the White Christ is master in the north today. He does not know the trouble our old king, Harold Bluetooth, once went to, teaching the heathen about the true God." Bjorn looked past Starkad at the man who spoke from the ship. He was very tall and thin, and had long grey plaits on either side of his head, coming down from below a gilded war helm. In his bronze-studded belt he carried 2 swords, one long, one short. In his right hand a tall ash spear. On his left arm a round hide buckler plated with silver strips. His heavy cloak of red wool flared out behind him like a storm cloud in the setting sun. The men about the ship on the shore began to clap their hands together and shout out, "Jarl Skallagrim! Jarl Skallagrim!" Even Starkad seemed rather small beside this splendid man on the ship, and Bjorn was scarcely surprised when Glam held out his hands wide and called in a shrill voice, "I meant no harm, Lord. I spoke of Odin only because we poor folk here have always held him as our master. We know no better, Lord. We are poor fools, Lord. You will see that we mean no harm to the White Christ or to old King Bluetooth." Jarl Skallagrim smiled like winter, with his grey hair riding the wind about him like a snow cloud. He said bitterly, "We call at this forsaken midden of a place to pick up a keg or 2 of fresh water and a sheep or 2 to fill our bellies, voyaging, and we have to listen to a madman who is so afraid to die that he will praise any god or any king in return for his miserable life." Starkad called back over his broad shoulder, "What with him, Jarl? Slave or spear point?" Jarl Skallagrim turned his back and began to walk down the deck. "Neither," he said, just above the hissing of the sea. "I want no thing like him aboard Reindeer, nor should you want his dog blood on your point, to eat it away with its poison and blunt it. He is a heathen, and that's that. Bind him hand and foot with thongs and put him into the first rock pool that will hold him. Not a very deep pool, though. He needs time to think on God before he drowns at the next tide." Bjorn did not watch while the men did this. Starkad stood looking at him coldly and said, "Why do you mourn, boy? He was your enemy." Bjorn answered, "I do not like anyone to be hurt, Jomsviking." Starkad smiled for the first time and said, "Then you should have been born into another world than this. Everyone gets hurt, as you should know by now. But why mourn? If this dog keeps howling long enough, someone will come down and take him out of the pool. More's the pity." When the other Jomsviking came back from putting Glam down and his cries had started echoing along the shore, Starkad turned and began to walk towards the longship, for it was time to catch the ebb tide and be away. Bjorn was still kneeling among the pebbles when the men strained to push off with the long oars. Now he felt lost indeed. He would almost have been glad to have Glam beside him, for at least that would have been some sort of company, bad as it was. And when the boy began to feel that he was shut off from all men, Starkad came to the prow and called to him sharply, "Well, must we wait here all day for you? Are you afraid to wet your feet and come aboard?" No dog ever ran to his master as fast as Bjorn ran to that ship, gasping as he plunged waist deep in the cold seawater. Then a black-bearded Jomsviking leaned over the side and hauled him in, grumbling a little that the boy brought so much water into the ship with him.